answer. Today I will introduce the cause of LGBT. LGBT is a comprehensive term for lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgender, and other sexual minorities. The term LGBT attaches great importance to the cultural diversity of sexual orientation and gender identity. In addition to narrow definitions, the gay, bisexual, or transgender community, it can broadly represent all non-intersexual people. Another as the word clinker question gender and intersex after intersexuals. So this is the first reason. The second reason is education. Childhood experience and sexual involvement will lead to homosexuality. In a study of 19 active homosexual children, they found that they had little or no relationship with same-sex parents or mothers, but at the same time they were too close to heterosexual parents. According to our data analysis, boys who grow up in the family relationship have the opportunity to grow up and become homosexual or develop serious homosexual problems. Despite all of the argument above, it only focuses on scientific and westernized analysis. Therefore, the LGBT issues in Malaysia with three major objectives below. The first one is to investigate the background, history, and the factors of the raising of LGBT on Malaysian people. The second is to know the difference between the rights that Malaysian LGBT fund for the right according to the Islamic perspective. The third is to observe the Malaysians' point of view towards the Malaysian LGBT.
So I will talk about the background or history of rising LGBT cases in Malaysia. So recently, the issues of LGBT are really distressing as it has been normalized, and the practices that are being actively done openly in Malaysia. So the LGBT issues get a lot of attention from the media as it has been a sensitive issue right now. So this social issue has been in Malaysia for a long time, but this group is not considered as a dangerous group until it has been highlighted by the local press. So Malaysia is a multi-ethnic and multi-religion country, with Islam being a largest practiced religion and exercise a dual system of law that includes secular and Sharia. So Islam being a religion that extremely forbids same-sex relationship or any unnatural relationship among human beings. Malaysia is a country that against LGBT, both in Sharia and common law, will be free from this practice, but vice versa happened. This issue exists in the nation and becomes a public concern when people openly campaign for their rights to practice LGBT in Malaysia. So people who involved in this practice thought that it is a part of their fundamental rights to practice it as long as it is a consensual between two adults. So the background of this issue related to the changes that are going to happen in this world generally in terms of the fight and clamor of human rights and enrichment of modern Western liberal ideology on many nations. So liberalism is an ideology that people believe develops during the Enlightenment, which preaches liberty and equality among people and proponent freedom of mankind that use their reason to behave the way they feel fit, as long as it does not impinge others' rights. So the spread of this ideology, plus with the Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations, are the two important components which support LGBT, and they use it as a reference point in spread of LGBT practice in Malaysia. So United Nations has a few ways to step up to support LGBTQ people in the past decades. So in 2011, the UN Human Rights Council passed a wide-ranging resolution on human rights, on sexual orientation and gender identity, expressing concern about violence towards LGBTQ people and commissioning the first ever UN study focused on LGBTQ issues. So in August 2015, the UN Security Council held its first ever meeting to address the human rights of LGBTQ people under ISIS. So the briefing was convened by the US and Chile, with 9 out of 15 Security Council member countries attending, as well as dozens of other countries. So the UN Refuge Agency has played a crucial role in assisting LGBTQ people in fleeing violence and persecution, and in helping them resettle in countries that are more welcoming to LGBTQ people. So they have repeatedly update their guidance on how to effectively and sensitively assist LGBTQ refuge and asylum seekers. When the UN released its Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs) in 2015, many countries committed to interpreting their language to ensure that LGBTQ people are not left behind.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Akila Izzati binti Muhammad Raslan. LGBT is a major issue which has been discussed all over the world, as their movements are significantly growing day by day. The LGBT issue in Malaysia are currently arising due to several factors. One of the factors associated to the rising of LGBT in Malaysia is because of the influence of friends in same-gender school. The possibility for students to involve in such kind of LGBT practice is easy, as they spend a lot of time together with the same sex, and they might be unaware of the inappropriate influences that they are exposed to. In many research conducted, majority of the respondents admit that they started to realize their sexual confusion towards the same gender when they went to the same gender school. The strong influence from friends is the causes why they involve in such things. Another factor is social media as a platform to disseminate LGBT movements. Majority of the LGBT community, they rely on social media to propagate information about their movements and also to communicate with other LGBT peers. Social media such as Twitter were used globally by the LGBT community for them to express themselves, to spread information, to share their feelings and experiences. Moreover, through social media, they can use a specific hashtag such as hashtag Sexuality Merdeka and hashtag Campur LGBT were used by the Malaysian LGBT to share their posts, pictures, videos about their movements. Lastly, most of the Malaysian LGBT were found that they involved in LGBT due to their past experiences. Some of them reported that they were being sexual abused in the past that makes them turn out that way due to stress and trauma. And there are some of them reported that they were getting dumped by their partners before that makes them turn into bisexual and homosexual as they feel betrayed. That's all for the factors of the rising LGBT in Malaysia. Thank you.
The second objective is the rights that Malaysian LGBT fight for. First off, the equal rights. Malaysia has been mocked for ignoring equality and justice because of some factors. The first one is government need to give democratic space to every citizen. This claim by the LGBT activists due to their agenda on preaching and spreading LGBT got called up by the minister in the Prime Minister's department. They also insisted that LGBT students had the equal rights and protection, but the government could not take the action on the problem. Next, prohibition to undergo gender reassignment surgery in Malaysia, as it is not allowable according to the fatwa, and even though they made the change overseas, they cannot apply to change their sex status in the documents. The solely reason is because LGBT does not recognized by the law of Malaysia. Therefore, they fight back in the parliament as they proposed a report for justice. However, the result was just to be ridiculed and rejected. Secondly, the LGBT community fight for the right to end discrimination of the government and the society. The government discriminates them by making programs to change them back to their belief on their sexual orientation. They also voted against biased laws against LGBT group on UN and made a law of carnal knowledge against the order of nature, that the sentence is up to 20 years in prison. Next, for the society, they regard LGBT as deviant person, and many cases of discrimination reported, such as a transgender woman got attacked by 5 guys in the street. The reason was she was he. Lastly, freedom of expression or speech. There is a case of 4 LGBT Muslim female transgender activists refute Sharia law by bidding in the court for freedom of expression on styling clothes based on personal preferences, not gender identity. However, they lost the case. Furthermore, LGBT said that Islam is a justification to oppress LGBT community. And the last one is the GAJ organization demanded equal rights, freedom of speech and freedom of association and assembly towards the government. The way that they fight for the right to end the discrimination is by establish an organization called Justice for Sisters. The objectives of this organization are to advocate and raise funds to fight in the court. They got an achievement where they won against the Sharia law for 1 year before the Supreme Court overturned their decision.
Assalamualaikum. I am Rani Khan, 1734924. I will explain about Islamic perspective on LGBT. In Islam, it is specifically said about the sexual relationship between men. All sexual activities that involve same-sex is unnatural, prohibited by God. Similarly, on Torah in Judaism, the law of the God as revealed to Moses and recorded in the first 5 books of the Hebrew scripture Bible. In the Hadith, there is a categorized prohibition against lesbian. Many scholars from the West have started to re-examining Islamic teaching on same-sex relationship. Some Muslim scholars, they present wrong information of the Islamic source to justify LGBT. There are 8 hadiths that clearly mention about LGBT people. Homosexuality and resemble men and also resemble women are considered as a major sins in Islam. There are hadiths, it says, if you find someone to practice the action of people of Lut, kill those individuals who commit above sins and below. This LGBT issue is not a new thing. In fact, Allah has explained about homosexuality issues which occurred among people of Lut. It is mentioned in verse 80 to 84, Surah Al-Alaq. And we had sent Lut when he said to his people, "Do you commit such immorality as no one has preceded you from among the world? Indeed, you approach men with desires instead of women." But the answer of his people was only that they said, "Avenge them from your city. Indeed, they are men who keep themselves pure." But the answer of his people was only that they said, "And we rain upon them a rain of stones." Then see how the end of the criminals. The Quran is almost the same as the version of the Bible. For the people of the Lut, Quranic verses are mentioned at 14 places. The forbidden homosexuality, insisting on sexual violence as the case of the punishment of the people of the Lut. Some of the Muslim thinkers, such as scholars and imams, are bending the Islamic beliefs in different ways to prove that they are not wrong. Hadith related to LGBT. If a woman comes upon a woman, they are both adulterous. If a man comes upon a man, then they are both adulterous. Al-Mujam al-Awsat. For the adulterer who is unmarried will get 100 lashing, but not killed. On other hadiths, whoever is for conducing himself in a meeting of the people of Lut, kill the door and the receiver. Sunnah al-Bayhaqi. Hadith for the transgender. Women and men, the Prophet Muhammad cursed effeminate, the men who dress like women and the women dress like a man. He also said, "Avenge them out of your house." Some gay and lesbian Muslims disagree to this story. Surprisingly, there are gay imams in our Muslim community, but some of them notice that the problem is not about the religion Islam, it is about the discrimination. Creating LGBT-friendly mosque. A gay imam created a mosque which they accept LGBTQ people. The reason he made this mosque is a young Muslim transgender woman died because she did not have any place to belong. Moreover, none of the imams wanted to do the prayer for her because she was a transgender. In Paris, in Europe, first gay-friendly mosque is opened. It is organized by Ludovic Muhammad Zahid. He is a gay Islam scholar who married to a man. In Toronto, there is the first LGBT-friendly mosque, Unity Mosque, by Imam El-Farouqi. Wanted that the space for Muslims and all humans welcome and celebrate human diversity. No dress code for women, no gender segregation for both genders. Most of the Friday prayer is led by women. According to Sharia, all sexual contacts between unmarried men and women are forbidden. In America, Muslims are arguing about the same-sex marriage. So many Muslims are willing to support the rights of the other Americans to shape their beliefs. In some LGBT-friendly mosques, they want to show that female can also lead the prayer, so female are leading the prayer in Chicago, in other many places. And in some mosques, they don't have the room for each man and for the woman. They just pray both in the same room, and most of the women are leading the prayer. Or in some mosques, the women don't have to put the scarves and they can just do the prayer. So in many places now opening the LGBTQ friendly mosque, and they are bending the Islamic rules.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ma Xiaojuan. My project topic is cultural beliefs and the practice of LGBT community in Malaysia. I will present about Malaysia's point of view towards the Malaysian LGBT. As is known to all, Malaysia is a multi-religious and multi-ethnic country. Malaysia also attracts people of different races, religions, and cultures from all over the country because of its high inclusiveness. However, in recent years, with the legalization of homosexuality in some Western countries, LGBT issues have frequently appeared in the news in Malaysia. Islamic is the official religion of Malaysia. Under the full implementation of Sharia in Malaysia, the LGBT community is not only doing things against Islam, but also against the law of Malaysia. So in the Malaysian government's view on LGBT, Malaysia's national leader has also voiced opposition to LGBT rights. Former Great Primary Minister Mahathir Mohamad on LGBT issue, he said, while the government respects the recommendation of the Malaysia Human Rights Commission on many human rights issues, something only apply to the West, we agree with the Suhakam has proposed, but we must remind them that our values are different from those of Western. They are free, we are not. Even if it's accepted as human rights in Western countries, we still cannot accept sentences. Najib Razak, Malaysia's 6th Primary Minister, said Malaysia should not support more LGBT rights. He also noted that the government of Malaysia, a Muslim country, is committed to doing all it can to protect and defend human rights, but only if there is not much conflict with Islam. Malaysia can no longer defend more extreme human rights such as gay, lesbian, and transgender rights. Malaysian people's view on LGBT. Although the Malaysian government and law are against LGBT, in recent years, LGBT issues have been raised by the few people who have begun to advocate the human rights of the LGBT community. Even on the street of Kuala Lumpur in 2019, some people marched for LGBT legalization, but the practice has been opposed by many in society. They thought it was a ridiculous move. It can be seen that since Malaysia has more than 60% of Muslims.
So I will do conclusion now. As technically advances and research advances, those who are right or wrong can continue to discuss. Homosexuality may not cause human race to multiply. In fact, it seems that it has not stopped it. So we have through it to this day, the evolutionary track. There is no need to pursue perfect. It may even be beneficial from some angles. Consistently evolve to purpose perfect instead of pursuit to. Even you think that gradually is not the pursuit of perfection because of competition, but our status quo is definition not the best status quo. Taking a 10,000 step back, even if homosexuality disappears, it hasn't worked yet because it is not necessary. Moreover, in the trajectory of human science and technically, the continuation of things can be continued without the form of sexual life.